We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Faith. Thomas Morrison's heavy boots echoed through St. Michael's Cathedral as he made his way to his usual pew, third row from the front. At 35, his imposing 6'2" frame commanded respect, and even in his Sunday best, his muscular build spoke of the countless hours spent at construction sites. "Morning, Thomas," Shannon Parker, the church secretary, called out as she arranged the hymn books. "You're early today." "Always am, Shannon." His deep voice carried a note of pride. "My grandfather helped build this place. Being late would be disrespecting his memory." He ran his calloused hand along the wooden pew, feeling the grain his grandfather had carefully selected decades ago. The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows, illuminating the empty space beside him where Adriana should have been. "Adriana's helping with the youth group again?" Shannon asked, her tone careful, measured. Father Michael asked for her help with some event planning. Thomas's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "She'll be here before the service starts." Shannon hesitated, then spoke softly. "You know, Thomas, if you ever need to talk." "I appreciate it, Shannon, but everything's fine." His tone left no room for discussion. The cathedral doors opened, and Father James Sullivan entered, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile at the sight of Thomas. The elderly priest had been more than a spiritual guide since Thomas's father succumbed to cancer 5 years ago. "Thomas, my son." Father James approached, his arthritis-stiffened gait slower than it used to be. "I was hoping to catch you early. How's the renovation project coming along?" "On schedule, Father. We'll have the new wing ready for Easter." Thomas stood, towering over the priest. "Morrison Building and Restoration never misses a deadline. Just like your father." Father James clasped Thomas's shoulder. "He'd be proud of how you've carried on the family legacy." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Father Michael Reynolds, the younger priest who joined their parish 2 years ago. At 32, he brought a different energy to the church, one that attracted younger parishioners, especially women. "Thomas." Father Michael's practice charm was on full display. "I just left Adriana in the conference room. She's been invaluable with the fundraiser planning." Thomas nodded curtly. "She mentioned she'd be busy this morning. Your wife has quite an eye for design. The way she's transformed the community center, it's exactly what we needed to attract more young families." Before Thomas could respond, the side door opened, and Adriana hurried in. At 33, she still turned heads with her grace and beauty. Though Thomas noticed the dark circles under her eyes she'd tried to conceal with makeup. "Sorry I'm late," she whispered, sliding into the pew beside him. Her designer dress seemed out of place for a Sunday service, and her perfume was stronger than usual. Thomas said nothing, but his hand gripped the hymnal tighter, knuckles whitening. He'd seen the hotel receipt that morning, tucked away in her purse when he was looking for car keys. The Grand Plaza Hotel, 2 towns over. He'd built their renovation 3 years ago. 15 stories of luxury he'd never imagined his wife would have reason to visit. The congregation filled in around them as Father James began the service. Thomas observed how Peter Reynolds, Father Michael's younger brother and seminary student, slipped in through the back, taking a seat near Angela Martinez, a troubled teenager who'd been attending youth counseling sessions. Shannon Parker watched this interaction from her position near the altar, her own painful history with infidelity making her particularly attuned to the undercurrents of deception. She saw how Peter's hand briefly touched Angela's shoulder, how the girl flinched despite her attempt to smile. Detective Laura Reeves, recently returned to Cedar Grove, sat in the back row. She wasn't particularly religious, but the string of missing donation checks had brought her here. She observed the dynamics playing out before her with professional interest, noting how Father Michael's gaze lingered on Adriana during the sermon, how Thomas's shoulders tensed each time the young priest spoke. "Let us pray for redemption," Father James intoned, unaware of the tensions brewing in his congregation. Thomas closed his eyes, but didn't pray. Instead, he recalled the morning he'd first met Adriana, 17 years ago at Cedar Grove High. She'd been new in town, lost and looking for the art room. He'd been a senior, already working part-time in construction, already building his future. He'd shown her the way, and somehow never stopped trying to show her the way since then. Those who seek forgiveness shall find it, Father James continued. But true redemption requires genuine repentance. Thomas opened his eyes, catching Father Michael staring at Adriana again. The young priest quickly looked away, but Thomas had seen enough. 12 years of marriage had taught him Adriana's tells. The way she twisted her wedding ring when she lied, how she overcompensated with expensive perfume when she felt guilty. The service proceeded with its usual rhythm, but Thomas felt the undercurrents of tension building. He noticed how Peter Reynolds kept glancing at Angela Martinez, how the girl's mother seemed oblivious to her daughter's distress. He saw Shannon Parker's concerned looks, Detective Reeves's calculating observation, and Father James's growing confusion at the subtle shifts in his parish's dynamics. After the service, Thomas watched as Adriana made excuses to stay behind, claiming more event planning needs. He drove home alone, his truck's engine growling in harmony with his mounting anger. In his workshop behind their house, he pulled out the hotel receipt again, studying the date. Last Tuesday, when Adriana had claimed to be at a design conference in the city. The phone rang. It was Shannon Parker. Thomas, her voice was hesitant. There's something you should know. The church's financial records, there are irregularities. Detective Reeves has been asking questions. What kind of irregularities? Missing checks, unauthorized withdrawals. And, Thomas, they coincide with certain late-night planning meetings. Thomas's free hand curled into a fist. Who has access to the accounts? Father Michael, primarily. And recently, he added Peter as an authorized signer. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture Thomas had been refusing to see. The late nights, the changed passwords on Adriana's phone, the new clothes, and now missing church funds. Thank you, Shannon, he said, his voice deadly calm. I'll handle it. He hung up and sat at his workbench, surrounded by the tools of his trade. His grandfather had taught him that building required 3 things: proper tools, precise measurements, and patience. His father had added a 4th: the will to see things through, no matter how difficult the job. Thomas picked up a framed photo of him and Adriana on their wedding day, studying it with cold detachment. The man in that photo had believed in love, in trust, in the sanctity of marriage. That man had been a fool. The sound of Adriana's car pulling into the driveway broke his contemplation. He replaced the frame and waited, listening to her heels clicking on the pavement, growing closer to his workshop. The door opened, and there she stood, still in her designer dress, still wearing too much perfume. Thomas? Her voice wavered. We need to talk. He turned slowly, fixing her with a stare that made her take a step back. Yes, he agreed, his voice devoid of emotion. We do. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The renovation of St. Michael's Cathedral began on a Monday, but the cracks in Thomas Morrison's life had started forming long before. As he supervised the construction crew gutting the old community center, his mind wandered to the conversation with Adriana in his workshop 2 weeks ago. It's not what you think, she'd said, clutching her designer purse like a shield. The hotel receipt? I can explain. Then explain. His voice had been cold enough to make her shiver. I needed somewhere quiet to work on the design proposals. The house, it's too full of distractions. The lie had hung between them like poison gas. Thomas had simply placed the church's financial records Shannon had given him on the workbench. Try again? Now, watching his crew tear down walls, Thomas felt a bitter satisfaction in destruction. He'd built his marriage on a foundation of trust, just as he'd built his reputation on quality work. Both foundations were crumbling. Mr. Morrison? One of his workers called out. We found something behind the old drywall. You might want to see this. Thomas crossed the debris-strewn floor, his boots crushing plaster dust. Behind the demolished wall was a small cavity containing a metal box. Inside, he found collection envelopes, dozens of them, all marked for deposit but never processed. Call Detective Reeves, he ordered, pulling out his phone to photograph the evidence. And nobody touches anything else until she arrives. Laura Reeves arrived within 15 minutes, her detective's badge catching the light from the construction lamps. She surveyed the scene with professional detachment. "This is quite a find, Mr. Morrison," she said, bagging the envelopes as evidence. "These match the dates of our missing donations. Mind telling me why you were demolishing this particular wall?" "Structural necessity." Thomas crossed his arms. The architectural plans showed water damage. "Convenient." She studied him carefully. "Almost as convenient as you volunteering to oversee this renovation personally. My company's reputation is built on thoroughness, detective. So I've heard." She sealed the evidence bag. "You know, your wife's been spending a lot of time here during the planning phase. Any idea why she'd need to meet with Father Michael so frequently?" Thomas's jaw clenched. "You'd have to ask her." "I intend to." Detective Reeves tucked the evidence away, along with asking about certain hotel charges on the church credit card. After she left, Thomas found himself drawn to the church office where Shannon Parker was working late, as usual. The widow looked up as he entered, her face etched with concern. "I heard about what your crew found," she said, closing the accounting ledger she'd been reviewing. "There's more, Thomas. Peter Reynolds has been counseling Angela Martinez privately, against church policy. Her mother came to me worried about changes in Angela's behavior." Thomas leaned against the doorframe. "How long?" 2 months. Shannon hesitated. "The same time frame as some of these missing deposits. And Father Michael? Covers for his brother at every turn." She pulled out a stack of papers. "These are copies of all the irregular transactions I've found. Times, dates, amounts. There's a pattern, Thomas. Tuesday afternoons, Thursday evenings. When Adriana has her planning meetings," Thomas finished, his voice harsh. "I'm so sorry." Shannon stood, moving toward him. "I should have said something sooner. After what happened with my David." "Your husband's affair destroyed him," Thomas said bluntly. "Made him reckless enough to drive his car off that bridge." "I remember." Shannon flinched. "That's why I can't stay silent now. I see the same patterns, the same secrets. But this is worse, Thomas. They're using the church, using people's faith." The office door opened, and Father Michael entered, stopping short at the sight of them. The young priest recovered quickly, flashing his characteristic smile. "Thomas, Shannon, working late?" His tone was friendly, but his eyes darted to the papers on Shannon's desk. "Just reviewing the renovation budget," Thomas lied smoothly. "Shannon's been helping me reconcile the accounts." "Ah, yes. Adriana mentioned you were concerned about costs." Father Michael stepped closer. "She's been instrumental in fundraising, you know. Such a gift for persuasion." Thomas caught the slight emphasis on persuasion, saw the flicker of something like triumph in the priest's eyes. His hands itched to wrap around the younger man's throat, but he simply nodded. "Speaking of Adriana," Father Michael continued, "she's in the new wing with Peter, discussing youth program decor. Would you like me to let her know you're here?" "No need." Thomas straightened to his full height, enjoying how the priest had to look up at him. "I trust my wife." The lie tasted like acid, but he saw uncertainty flash across Father Michael's face. "Good. Let him wonder." Later that night, Thomas sat in his truck outside the cathedral, watching. He'd installed security cameras throughout the renovation site. Standard practice for his company, he'd told Father James. Now he watched the feeds on his phone as Adriana emerged from the new wing, followed 10 minutes later by not one, but both Reynolds brothers. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reeves. Financial records show both brothers had previous complaints at other parishes, all quietly resolved by transfers. "Call me?" Thomas didn't call. Instead, he drove to the Grand Plaza Hotel, showed his contractor's ID, and asked about recent renovations. The maintenance manager was happy to help, pulling up records of work orders. Room 1505's had some issues, the manager said. Multiple noise complaints on Tuesday afternoons. But the guests always check out before we can investigate. Thomas recognized the corporate card number on the receipts. It matched the church's account. Driving home, he found Adriana waiting in the kitchen, wearing one of her expensive new outfits. "Where have you been?" she asked. "I tried calling. Working late." He studied her left hand, noting the absence of her wedding ring. "Like you." She touched her bare fingers self-consciously. "I took it off to clean it. Must have forgotten to put it back on." "Funny thing about forgetting," Thomas said, pouring himself a whiskey. I forgot to mention that Morrison Building and Restoration installed new security systems in all our renovation projects last month. High-resolution cameras, motion sensors, the works. The glass slipped from Adriana's hand, shattering on the floor. She stared at him, face draining of color. "I should clean that up," she whispered. "Yes," Thomas agreed, his voice terrifyingly gentle. "You should clean up your messes, Adriana. All of them." He left her there, surrounded by broken glass, and went to his workshop. Inside, he opened his laptop and began reviewing the security footage, watching his wife's betrayal play out in crisp digital clarity. His grandfather had taught him to measure twice and cut once. Thomas intended to measure everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar, before he started cutting away the rod in his life. The next Sunday service would change everything, though not in the way anyone expected. As Thomas carefully backed up the security footage to multiple drives, he allowed himself a cold smile. Let them think they were clever, these wolves in shepherd's clothing. Let them think he was blind, weak, trusting. They would learn what the construction crews already knew. Thomas Morrison built things to last, but when something needed to be torn down, he was ruthlessly thorough in its destruction. Chapter 3. The Shattering. Easter Sunday dawned bright and clear, but Thomas Morrison had been awake long before the sun. He sat in his workshop, reviewing the evidence he'd gathered over the past weeks. Security footage, financial records, hotel receipts, and something new. A USB drive Angela Martinez had slipped to Shannon Parker after yesterday's confession. The teenager's recorded statement was damning. Peter Reynolds hadn't just counseled her. He'd groomed her, using the same techniques he and his brother had employed with Adriana and others. The pattern was clear now. Father Michael identified vulnerable women, using his position to gain their trust, while Peter played the role of sympathetic friend. Together, they created emotional dependencies they could exploit. Thomas's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reeves. "Got the warrant. Moving after the service. Keep your wife there." He deleted the message and went inside to dress for church. Adriana was already gone, claiming early morning preparation duties. He'd found another hotel receipt in her purse last night, this time for room 1505 at the Grand Plaza, dated just 2 days ago. The cathedral parking lot was full when he arrived. Easter brought out even the most infrequent churchgoers, filling every pew with witnesses to what would unfold. Thomas noted Peter Reynolds' car was missing, but Father Michael's sleek sedan was parked in its usual spot. Shannon Parker met him at the door, her face tense. "Angela's mother found photos on her phone," she whispered. "She's devastated. Detective Reeves is taking her statement now." Thomas nodded, proceeding to his usual pew. The renovation work had transformed the cathedral's interior, though not all the changes were visible. Behind the restored walls, Thomas had installed more than just new wiring. He created an infrastructure of surveillance that would prove instrumental today. Father James began the service with his usual warmth, though Thomas noticed the elderly priests seemed distracted. The morning's confession sessions had run long, and the strain showed on his face. "Today we celebrate renewal," Father James announced, his voice carrying to the packed pews. "Through Christ's sacrifice, we are offered the chance for rebirth, for redemption." Thomas watched Father Michael during the sermon, noting how the younger priest kept glancing toward the side door where Adriana usually entered. She was late, later than usual for even her preparation duties. Shannon Parker, manning the organ for the holiday service, played the hymns, her attention divided between her duties and the growing tension she sensed. She alone noticed when Detective Reeves slipped into the back of the church, accompanied by 2 plainclothes officers. In times of trial, Father James continued, we must remember that truth is God's light in the darkness. No sin can hide forever in his presence. The words had barely left his lips when the side door burst open. Adriana stumbled in, her designer dress wrinkled, her carefully applied makeup streaked with tears. The congregation turned as one to stare as she stumbled down the center aisle. "I can't," she choked out, her voice raw with emotion. "I can't keep lying. Father, forgive me." Thomas remained seated, his face an impassive mask as his wife fell to her knees in the aisle. "Forgive me, Father," she cried out, louder now. "I've slept with your son." The silence that followed was absolute. Father James, confused and shocked, responded instinctively from the pulpit, "I don't have a son." Adriana's laugh was tinged with hysteria. "Not you, the other priest's son, and his brother." The words echoed through the cathedral like thunder. Thomas finally stood, his movement drawing all eyes to him. The congregation held its breath, expecting an explosion of rage, a scene of violence. Instead, he simply walked to where Adriana knelt. "Get up," he said, his voice carrying in the silence. "You're making a spectacle of yourself." "Thomas, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. They said they would help me through my grief after the miscarriage. They understood my pain when you couldn't. Where are they now?" Thomas's question cut through her rambling like a blade. As if in answer, Detective Reeves stepped forward. "Peter Reynolds was arrested an hour ago, attempting to leave town with church funds and Angela Martinez. Father Michael is right here." The younger priest's voice rang out as he emerged from the sacristy. "And these are baseless accusations. Adriana is clearly suffering from some kind of breakdown." "We have proof," Thomas interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "Security footage, financial records, hotel receipts, witness statements. Your game is over." Father James gripped the pulpit for support, his face ashen. "Michael, is this true?" Before the younger priest could respond, Maria Martinez stood up from her pew, her voice shaking with rage. "My daughter trusted you. Both of you. She's 16 years old." The congregation erupted in chaos. Detective Reeves and her officers moved swiftly to contain Father Michael, who had turned to flee. Shannon Parker produced a file of financial documents, handing them to the stunned Father James. Through it all, Thomas stood like a stone in the center aisle, watching as the truth he'd helped uncover tore through the parish like divine lightning. His wife remained on her knees, broken by the weight of her own confession. "Thomas," she reached for his hand. "Please." He stepped back, denying her touch. "I've already called your sister Rachel. She's waiting to pick you up. Don't come home." As he turned to leave, Father James called out to him. "Thomas, my son, what can we do to heal from this?" Thomas paused at the door, looking back at the congregation, at Shannon's compassionate face, at Detective Reeves handcuffing Father Michael, at the weeping Martinez family, at his shattered wife. "Some things can't be healed, Father," he replied. "Some foundations, once cracked, can only be torn down. Start fresh. Build again. That's what my grandfather taught me, and he built this place to begin with." He walked out of St. Michael's Cathedral into the Easter morning, leaving behind the ruins of his marriage and the faith he'd once held so dear. In his pocket, his phone contained copies of all the evidence that would ensure the Reynolds brothers faced justice. But that would be another chapter, another story. For now, Act 1 of Thomas Morrison's life had ended in the only way it could, with truth cutting through lies like a builder's saw through rotted wood, revealing the corruption that had been hidden beneath the surface all along. Chapter 4: Aftermath. Cedar Grove buzzed with whispers in the days following the Easter Sunday confession. Thomas Morrison's workshop became his fortress. The space behind his house transformed into a command center for what would become his mission of vengeance. "You can't hide in here forever," Detective Laura Reeves said, standing in the workshop doorway 3 days after the incident. "I need your official statement." Thomas looked up from his workbench, where he'd laid out printed copies of bank statements Shannon had provided. "I'm not hiding, Detective. I'm hunting. The department has jurisdiction over this investigation," Laura reminded him, stepping inside. "Don't do anything stupid, like letting them transfer to another parish." Thomas's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Like your department did with their previous victims?" Laura's face tightened. "Those records were sealed." "Not anymore." Thomas pushed a folder across the workbench. 3 parishes in 5 years. Always the same pattern: vulnerable women, missing funds, hush transfers. Your bureaucracy failed them. "I won't." "Thomas, my wife emptied our savings account yesterday." He cut her off. $30,000 transferred to an offshore account. Peter Reynolds convinced her they'd start a new life together. His laugh was devoid of humor. She actually believed him. We can trace the transfer. Already did. Thomas tapped his laptop. My company handles construction for 6 major banks in the region. Their security teams owe me favors. The money went through 3 shells before disappearing in the Caymans. A knock at the workshop door interrupted them. Rachel, Adriana's sister, stood there looking uncomfortable. Thomas? We need to talk about Adriana? Laura nodded to Thomas. Remember what I said. Let the law handle this. After she left, Rachel entered hesitantly. The high school teacher's usual confidence was shaken. Adriana's not doing well. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. Not my problem anymore, Thomas replied coldly. She was manipulated, Thomas. They preyed on her grief over the miscarriage, made her dependent on their counseling. I found her journals. Rachel pulled out a notebook. You need to read this. Thomas didn't move to take it. Did you know? Rachel flinched. I suspected something was wrong. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she talked about their spiritual guidance. She swallowed hard. I should have said something. Yes, you should have. She's still my sister, Thomas. And she's not their only victim. Maria Martinez called me today about Angela. Thomas's head snapped up. What about Angela? She's missing. Left a note saying she was going to meet Peter to start their real life together. Maria's frantic. Thomas stood, his 6'2" frame radiating dangerous energy. When? This morning. Maria only called because she found your business card in Angela's room. Apparently, you gave it to her last week. Get out. Thomas, please. Get out. After Rachel left, Thomas pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Rivera? I need everything you have on Peter Reynolds' movements since Sunday. And check the Grand Plaza Hotel, room 1505. He has a pattern. The next call was to Shannon Parker. Tell me about Angela Martinez's counseling sessions. Times, dates, locations. Everything. Shannon's voice was strained. Tuesday afternoons, usually. But last week, Peter changed the schedule. Started meeting her early mornings instead, before school. In the new wing of the church, where the renovation, she stopped. Thomas, the hidden room we found behind the false wall. The one with the safe. Where Father Michael kept the donation records, Thomas finished. The combination, I saw Peter using it last month. June 18th, 24. Thomas ended the call and opened his laptop. The security cameras he'd installed throughout the renovation site were still active, their feeds accessible through his private server. He clicked through them until he found what he wanted, footage from that morning showing Peter Reynolds leading Angela Martinez into the hidden room. A text from Detective Reeves lit up his phone. Got the warrant for the brothers' bank records. Multiple accounts under false names. This goes deeper than we thought. Thomas ignored it, focused on the footage. He watched as Peter emerged alone 20 minutes later, carrying a briefcase that hadn't been there before. The teenager never came out. His phone rang again. Maria Martinez. Mr. Morrison? The police won't help. They say she's probably just running away, that they can't do anything for 24 hours. Please, you're the only one who believes me. Thomas stood, grabbing his truck keys. Mrs. Martinez, meet me at St. Michael's in 15 minutes. And bring Angela's phone if you have it. The church parking lot was empty when he arrived, save for Maria's minivan. The distraught mother ran to him as he stepped out of his truck. I found this in her room. She thrust a letter at him. It's Peter's handwriting, not hers. I know my daughter's writing. Thomas scanned the note, recognizing the same manipulative phrases he'd found in Adriana's journals. The phone. Maria handed him a pink-cased iPhone. The police said without proof of a crime. They're wrong. Thomas led her to the church's side entrance, where his construction credentials still granted him access. Angela's not running away. She's bait. Bait? Maria's voice shook. I don't understand. Peter Reynolds has done this before. He takes a teenager across state lines, threatens to expose her to her family and community if she doesn't cooperate. Meanwhile, his brother pressures the parents to keep quiet, promising church assistance in finding the runaway if they don't involve authorities. They reach the new wing, Thomas's boots silent on the floors he'd installed himself. The hidden room's panel swung open easily. He'd built it, after all, though the Reynolds brothers never knew that. The safe stood open, empty except for a single envelope. Inside, Thomas found a photo of Angela, bound and terrified, along with a burner phone number. Maria stifled a scream. Thomas handed her his phone. "Call Detective Reeves. Tell her exactly what we found. I'm going after your daughter." The police said. "I'm not the police." Thomas's voice was ice. "I'm a contractor who knows exactly how many abandoned construction sites exist within a 3-hour radius. Sites owned by shell companies matching the ones your daughter's captors used to hide their stolen church funds." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Mrs. Martinez, when Detective Reeves arrives, give her this." He handed her a USB drive. "It's everything I've gathered on the Reynolds brothers. Times, dates, accounts, victims. Everything they thought they'd hidden behind drywall and doctrine. You've been planning this? Since the moment I found that first hotel receipt in my wife's purse." Thomas checked his weapon, legally registered for job site security. "They thought they could hide their sins behind my family's legacy, behind the walls my grandfather built." His smile was terrifying. "They forgot who built those walls in the first place." Chapter 5: The Descent. Thomas Morrison's transformation from respected builder to ruthless hunter began with a phone call. Marcus Rivera, the private investigator he'd hired, had traced Peter Reynolds' burner phone to an industrial park 30 miles outside Cedar Grove. "It's one of your company's abandoned sites," Rivera reported. "The old Maxwell development project that went bust last year. Security cameras show a black SUV matching Reynolds' rental entering the complex 4 hours ago. No signs of exit. Send me the coordinates," Thomas ordered, already moving. His truck's engine roared to life as he pulled out of St. Michael's parking lot, leaving Maria Martinez to deal with the arriving police. Shannon Parker's voice crackled through his Bluetooth. "Thomas, Detective Reeves is furious. She's threatening to charge you with interference in an active investigation. Let her." Thomas shifted gears aggressively. "What did you find in the financial records?" Father Michael cleared out the church accounts this morning. Over $200,000 in missing donations, all transferred to numbered accounts. But here's the interesting part. He used the same bank your company contracts with for construction loans. Thomas's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Give me access." "Thomas, that would be illegal. They're using my family's legacy to fund their corruption." He cut her off. "My grandfather built that church. My father maintained it. Now they've turned it into their hunting ground." His voice dropped dangerously. "Access. Now." Shannon sighed. "Check your email." And Thomas? The security footage from the hidden room. Angela wasn't their first victim. "I found evidence of at least 3 other girls in the past year alone." Thomas clicked the email link one-handed, scanning the bank records Shannon had acquired. The pattern was clear. Regular transfers disguised as construction costs, all flowing through accounts he now recognized. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Adriana tried to kill herself. Pills. She's stable, but Thomas, the thing she told the doctors about what they did to her." He ignored it, focusing on the road ahead. Adriana had made her choices. Right now, Angela Martinez needed him more than his faithless wife. The industrial park loomed ahead, a maze of abandoned construction projects and half-finished buildings. Thomas killed his headlights, parking behind a rusted shipping container. The black SUV Rivera had mentioned sat in front of Building C, the same structure where Thomas had once planned to build luxury condos before the economy tanked. His phone buzzed again. "Detective Reeves. Morrison, I swear to God, if you do anything stupid, like letting them escape again." He kept his voice low, moving through the shadows he knew by heart. "How many times have they done this, Detective? How many girls did your department fail to protect? We're 20 minutes out." "Just wait. Angela doesn't have 20 minutes. He ended the call. The building's security system was one he'd installed himself. Thomas bypassed it easily, slipping inside through a service entrance. Voices echoed from the second floor. Peter Reynolds, arrogant and smug. "No one's coming for you, Angela. Your mother thinks you're a runaway. In a few days, my brother will convince her to keep quiet, just like all the others." "My mom's not like the others." Angela's voice was shaky but defiant. "She'll never stop looking. Like Thomas Morrison's wife? She thought she was special too. Now look at her. Just another desperate woman who fell for God's chosen ones." Thomas moved silently up the stairs, years of construction work having taught him which steps would betray his presence. Peter's voice grew louder. Father Michael's arranging everything. By tomorrow, we'll be in South America. Your mother will get a letter explaining how you found your true calling and mission work. Very spiritual, very believable. Thomas reached the second floor. Through the doorway, he saw Angela tied to a chair, Peter pacing around her with the same briefcase he'd taken from the church. You won't get away with this, Angela spat. Mr. Morrison knows. I saw him watching during our counseling sessions. He gave me his card, told me to call if I ever felt unsafe. Peter laughed. Thomas Morrison is a fool. Too busy building his precious church to notice his own wife's betrayal. By the time he figures anything out, I already have. Peter spun around. Thomas filled the doorway, his frame blocking the only exit. Morrison! Peter stepped back, reaching for something in his jacket. This isn't what it looks like. Save it for your brother. Thomas advanced slowly. Though he might have trouble hearing your excuses from South America, Peter's eyes widened. How did you? I built this place, Reynolds. Built all the places you thought you could hide in. My family built the church you corrupted. Another step forward. I know exactly how many nails it takes to secure each beam. Exactly how much pressure each support wall can take. Stay back. Peter pulled out a gun. I'll shoot. With the same gun you used to threaten my wife. Thomas didn't stop moving. The one registered to a false name at your last parish? His smile was terrifying. Check the chamber. Peter pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Amazing what you can do with a master key to the hotel room where you keep your weapons, Thomas said conversationally. The same room where you took my wife, and God knows how many others. Sirens wailed in the distance. Peter glanced at the window, calculating. Go ahead, Thomas encouraged. It's only 2 stories. Probably won't kill you. Probably just break a few bones. Give you time to think about your choices while the doctors set them. You can't prove anything, Peter blustered. It's your word against? Against the video evidence? The financial records? The testimonies Shannon Parker has been gathering? Thomas reached Angela, starting to untie her bonds. Against the GPS data from the burner phone you thought was untraceable? The sirens grew closer. Peter broke, running for the window. Thomas didn't stop him. The crash and scream that followed suggested Peter had forgotten about the construction debris position below. Or perhaps Thomas had moved it there earlier, knowing exactly how cornered rats typically react. Angela sobbed as Thomas freed her. I'm sorry, they said they'd hurt my mom if I didn't. It's not your fault. He helped her up as Detective Reeves and her team stormed the building. None of this is your fault. Laura Reeves took in the scene, then looked out the window where Peter Reynolds lay groaning amidst a pile of strategically placed rebar. Did he jump or did he fall? Does it matter? Thomas turned to leave. Thomas? Laura's voice stopped him. We found Father Michael. He never made it to the airport. Someone tipped off Border Patrol about a priest carrying stolen church funds. Imagine that. This isn't over, she warned. The diocese will try to bury it. They always do. Thomas paused in the doorway. No, detective. This time they'll face it. Because this time, they're not dealing with scared teenagers or vulnerable women. His voice hardened. They're dealing with the man who built their house of God. And I know exactly where the bodies are buried. Sometimes literally. Chapter 6, Gathering Storm. The storm broke over Cedar Grove like divine retribution. Father Michael Reynolds sat in an interrogation room at the police station, his clerical collar removed, his carefully crafted mask of piety cracking under the weight of evidence Thomas Morrison had gathered. These signatures, Detective Reeves spread bank documents across the table, match accounts we found in Peter's possession. Care to explain why a parish priest needs offshore holdings? I want my lawyer, Father Michael demanded. Your lawyer's busy, Thomas said from the doorway. Something about multiple clients creating conflicts of interest. You can't be in here, Morrison, Laura warned, but made no move to stop him as he entered. Actually, I can. Thomas dropped a thick folder on the table. Just deputized as a special consultant to the investigation. Signed by the DA himself. Father Michael's composure slipped further. Whatever you think you know. I know everything. Thomas sat across from him. Shannon Parker kept excellent records. Angela Martinez made detailed statements. And my wife. His voice turned arctic. Adriana's suicide attempt loosened a lot of tongues at the hospital. Seems guilt does that to people. Adriana's alive? Something like relief crossed the priest's face. Disappointed? Thomas leaned forward. Like you were disappointed when the others survived? When they started talking instead of dying quietly like David Parker did after your last parish scandal? Laura's head snapped up. What? Show her the file, detective. Page 36. Shannon's been doing research on her late husband's last days. Seems he didn't drive off that bridge by accident. He was chasing a lead about two priests who'd manipulated his wife before moving to their next target. Father Michael's face went pale. That's a lie. Like the counseling sessions? Thomas pulled out a recorder. The ones where you and Peter tag-team vulnerable women? Creating emotional dependencies, exploiting their grief, their loneliness? He pressed play. Adriana's voice filled the room. They said they were chosen by God, that submitting to them was a form of worship. When I questioned it, they threatened to expose my sins to Thomas, to destroy his reputation in the community. They knew about the money I'd taken from the renovation fund for my shopping addiction. Father Michael said he'd tell everyone I'd stolen from the church. Thomas stopped the recording. That's just the beginning. Should we play the part where you detailed your brother's grooming techniques? Or perhaps your instructions on how to manipulate grieving mothers? Father Michael lunged across the table, but Thomas didn't flinch. Detective Reeves slammed the priest back into his chair. I am a man of God, Father Michael snarled. You're a predator who hid behind my family's legacy, Thomas corrected. Who used the walls my grandfather built to conceal your sins. A commotion outside interrupted them. Maria Martinez burst in, her face flushed with anger. You bastard! You told my daughter she was special, chosen by God. You let your brother. Mrs. Martinez, Laura moved to intercept her. You can't be here during. Show him, Maria demanded. Show him what Angela tried to do after your counseling sessions. Thomas pulled out more photos, Angela's scarred arms, her hospital records. Your brother's not the only one facing charges now, Father. Turns out crossing state lines with minors is a federal offense. You have no proof. Wrong. Thomas laid out printed emails. Your brother kept records. Insurance, he called it. In case you ever tried to abandon him, like you did at the last parish. He smiled coldly. Peter was always the weak link, wasn't he? Sloppy. Impulsive. You were the planner. Father Michael's mask cracked completely. He was supposed to wait. The plan was perfect. Take the church funds, disappear before anyone realized. But he couldn't control himself with that Martinez girl. Actually, Thomas leaned back. Peter did exactly what I needed him to do. Angela was never in real danger at the construction site. My men were watching the entire time. Your men? Marcus Rivera's security team. Former military. They've been tracking you both since Easter Sunday. Thomas stood. The construction site, the empty gun, the convenient pile of rebar. I designed all of it. Like I design all my projects. With precision, Laura stepped forward. Father Michael Reynolds, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, sexual exploitation. You can't do this. The priest looked wildly at Thomas. The diocese will protect me. They always protect their own. Check your phone, Thomas suggested. If you can get a signal. Strange how the story's already breaking on national news. Anonymous source provided quite a paper trail to the media. Maria Martinez spat at the priest before police let her out. Thomas gathered his files, then paused at the door. One more thing, he said conversationally. Remember that renovation project you approved last month? The one to reinforce the church's foundation. Father Michael stared at him, uncomprehending. I found some interesting things buried in those walls. Things your predecessors tried to hide. Seems you weren't the first predator to use my family's church as hunting ground. Thomas's voice hardened. But you'll definitely be the last. Outside the interrogation room, Laura confronted him. The construction site setup, the media leak, the federal involvement, you orchestrated all of it. Prove it. Damn it, Thomas. You can't take the law into your own hands. The law. Thomas laughed harshly. The law let them transfer 3 times when accusations surfaced. The law looked the other way when David Parker died, chasing the truth. The law failed those girls. And what about Adriana? Thomas's face closed off. My wife made her choices. She was manipulated, Thomas. The doctors say the psychological abuse is no longer my concern. He turned to leave. Focus on the Reynolds brothers, detective. Build your case. Just know that if they somehow slip through the system again, he didn't finish the threat. Laura called after him. This won't bring your marriage back, Thomas. No, he agreed without turning. But it will ensure they never destroy another family. Never corrupt another church. Never abuse another child. His voice carried down the hallway. Sometimes, detective, justice matters more than forgiveness. Shannon Parker waited by his truck, her face grave. It's done then? Almost. Thomas handed her a file. Get these to the press. All of it. The financial records, the victim statements, the pattern of transfers and cover-ups. The diocese will try to bury it. Let them try. Thomas started his engine. By the way, David would be proud of you. For helping expose the truth he died trying to uncover. Shannon touched his arm. What will you do now? Finish what I started. Thomas pulled away from the curb. The storm's not over yet, and I mean to see it through to the end. In his rearview mirror, he watched Shannon Parker begin making calls, spreading the evidence he'd gathered like seeds before a hurricane. The truth would take root now, growing through the cracks in the foundation of power and privilege that had protected predators like the Reynolds brothers for too long. The rain began to fall as Thomas drove home, but he barely noticed. In his workshop, more files waited, more evidence. More weapons for the war he'd started. The Reynolds brothers were just the beginning. Their network of enablers and protectors would learn that Thomas Morrison built things to last, including his revenge. Let them come with their lawyers, their threats, their attempts to silence the truth. Thomas had constructed his case as carefully as he built his buildings, with a foundation strong enough to withstand any storm. And unlike the faith they corrupted, his need for justice would never waver. Chapter 7. The Trap. Thomas Morrison's workshop no longer resembled a craftsman's sanctuary. Blueprints covered the walls, surveillance photos lined the tables, and computer monitors displayed real-time feeds from cameras throughout Cedar Grove. Father Michael booked a flight to Argentina. Marcus Rivera reported, his military bearing evident even in civilian clothes. Leaving tomorrow night? No, he's not. Thomas studied a layout of his abandoned construction site. Shannon, what did you find? Shannon Parker touched a monitor. The monastery appointment is real. The diocese arranged it 3 days ago. Standard procedure for troubled priests. Her lips twisted. They're trying to get him out before the press catches wind of Angela's testimony. They'll fail. Thomas pointed to building schematics. Because we're going to trap them both tonight. Detective Laura Reeves leaned against the doorframe. I should arrest you for interfering with an investigation. But you won't. Thomas didn't look up. Because you've seen how the system protects men like them. I got the warrant for the offshore accounts, Laura countered. We can build a legal case. Like the ones they buried at their last 3 parishes? Thomas turned to face her. How many girls have to suffer while we play by their rules? The detective fell silent. Thomas returned to the blueprints, his voice hard. Rivera, is the site rigged? Cameras and mics in place. Motion sensors active. The ex-military man nodded. Audio's feeding straight to my team's van, backed up to secure servers. Mrs. Martinez? Thomas looked at Angela's mother. Maria Martinez clutched her phone. Angela's ready. She understands what to do. No one touches her, Thomas growled. That's the deal. She stays in the observation room with your security team. Rivera nodded. My men will protect her. Shannon stepped forward. Thomas, the bait for Father Michael. Is me. Adriana's voice came from the workshop door. She stood there pale but determined, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Thomas's face hardened. Get out. I have to do this. Adriana stepped inside. I owe it to Angela. To all of them. You lost the right to be noble when you betrayed our marriage. This isn't about us. Adriana's voice sharpened. Michael will know it's a trap if you contact him. But if I reach out, tell him I'm terrified of you finding the rest of the evidence. She's right. Laura interjected. He'll believe her vulnerability. His type always does. Thomas stared at his wife, his expression unyielding. Fine, make the call. But understand this, after tonight we're done. No reconciliation. No forgiveness. Adriana nodded, tears in her eyes. I know. I need to make this right. You can't. Thomas turned away. Rivera, get her briefed on the script. As the others dispersed to their positions, Shannon lingered. Thomas, are you sure about this? About trapping two predators who used my family's church as hunting grounds? His voice was ice. Who stole not just money but innocence. Who manipulated grieving women and vulnerable girls. About not letting your anger make you cross lines you can't uncross. Thomas picked up his phone. The lines were crossed the moment they turned a house of God into their personal playground. He dialed. Peter? It's Morrison. We need to talk about the church renovation funds. Tonight. The trap was set. Thomas watched the monitors as the pieces fell into place. Peter Reynolds arrived first, drawn by greed and the promise of hidden church accounts. Father Michael followed an hour later, responding to Adriana's tearful call about Thomas discovering their private recordings. They're both inside, Rivera reported through the comm link. Motion sensors confirmed they're heading to the main room. Thomas nodded to Detective Reeves. Your people in position? SWAT team standing by. But Thomas, whatever you're planning, just be ready. He headed for the exit. And Laura? Make sure those body cameras are running. The diocese won't be able to bury this evidence. The construction site loomed ahead, dark except for strategic lighting Thomas had installed. He'd built this place. He knew its bones, its weaknesses, its secrets. Now it would serve a different purpose. Inside, he heard voices echoing. Peter's nervous tenor, Father Michael's practice calm. And cutting through both, Adriana's carefully rehearsed fear. He knows everything, she was saying. The accounts, the other women, Angela. Calm down, Father Michael soothed. Thomas Morrison is just a builder. He can't. He's here. Peter's voice rose in panic. Thomas stepped into the room, his frame filling the doorway. Welcome to your confession, gentlemen. Chapter 8. Justice Served. The abandoned construction site transformed into an arena of justice as Thomas Morrison confronted the Reynolds brothers. Security cameras captured each moment. Evidence that would ensure no church bureaucracy could bury the truth this time. You're trespassing, Father Michael said smoothly. This is private property. My property? Thomas's voice cut like steel. My company. My cameras. My rules. Peter edged toward the exit. This is ridiculous. We don't have to. Angela Martinez, Thomas interrupted. 16 years old. You groomed her in counseling sessions, then threatened to expose her family's immigration status if she talked. You can't prove. Rebecca Collins, Sarah Thompson, Dana Miller. Thomas advanced. All vulnerable women you targeted at your last parish. All silenced with threats and church settlements. Father Michael's mask slipped. The diocese handled those cases by transferring you here, to my family's church, where you continued your pattern. Pattern? Peter forced a laugh. These are baseless. Play it, Thomas commanded. Angela's voice filled the room from hidden speakers, clear and damning. Father Michael said, if I told anyone about Peter's special counseling, they'd deport my mom. He made me watch while Peter practiced his sermons with other girls. Father Michael lunged for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Thomas smiled coldly. Surprised? I built this place. Those doors only open from the outside now. This is kidnapping. Peter shouted. No, this is justice. Thomas nodded toward a darkened window. Detective Reeves? Your turn. Lights blazed as SWAT teams breached the building. Laura Reeves entered, flanked by officers. Father Michael Reynolds, Peter Reynolds, you're under arrest for sexual exploitation of a minor, fraud, extortion. I demand a lawyer. Father Michael's composure shattered. You'll need one. Thomas pointed to more hidden cameras. We've been broadcasting this whole conversation to secure servers. Copies are already with the FBI, the media, and victims advocacy groups. Peter broke, turning on his brother. It was his idea. He found the vulnerable ones, told me which to target. Shut up. Father Michael swung at him. SWAT officers tackled them both as Laura read them their rights. Thomas watched impassively as the brothers were cuffed and separated. Thomas? Adriana stepped forward. We're done here. He turned away. Detective Reeves has your statement about their manipulation techniques. Use it in court. Maria Martinez burst in, running to embrace her daughter as Angela emerged from the observation room. You did it, Maria sobbed. You got them? No, Angela did. Thomas nodded to the teenager. Her courage made this possible. Rivera's security team began collecting equipment as more police arrived. Laura approached Thomas with handcuffs. You orchestrated an elaborate sting without police approval, she said. I should arrest you too. But you won't. Thomas met her gaze. Because we both know the system needed a push. Laura sighed, lowering the cuffs. The DA wants to talk to you. Federal prosecutors too. I'll cooperate. Thomas watched the Reynolds brothers being led away. After all, I have more evidence they haven't seen yet. More? Laura's eyes narrowed. Files from their previous parishes. Financial records showing corruption up to the diocesan level. Testimony from other victims. His smile was predatory. I'm a builder detective. I believe in strong foundations. Outside, reporters had begun gathering. Shannon Parker handled them expertly, providing documents that proved decades of systematic abuse and cover-ups. The diocese is demanding a meeting, she told Thomas later. Let them. He surveyed the scene. Their house of cards is falling. Time to build something better on the ruins. Chapter 9. Rebuilding. The verdict came down like divine judgment. Father Michael Reynolds received 20 years for his crimes. Peter got 15, with both facing multiple federal charges still pending. Thomas Morrison sat in the courtroom, watching justice unfold with cold satisfaction. The evidence you gathered was instrumental, the federal prosecutor told him afterward. We've opened investigations into 3 more dioceses based on the patterns you exposed. Thomas nodded curtly. Send any construction-related questions to my office. I know how they hide things in church renovations. Mr. Morrison? Angela Martinez approached, stronger now, her voice steady. Mom and I are starting a support group for others who went through this. Would Morrison Building and Restoration consider? Send me the plans. Thomas's voice softened slightly. My company will handle the renovation pro bono. Months passed. St. Michael's Cathedral underwent another transformation, this time stripping away the hidden spaces and secret rooms the Reynolds brothers had exploited. Father James, with Thomas's guidance, implemented new safety protocols and transparency measures. The congregation is healing, Shannon Parker reported one evening in Thomas's workshop. Your exposure of the corruption actually strengthened people's faith. They needed to see evil confronted, not hidden. Thomas looked up from his blueprints designs for a new advocacy center. Evil thrives in darkness. In secrets. I merely turned on the lights. You did more than that. Shannon moved closer. You gave victims a voice. A chance for justice. He studied her. This strong woman who'd lost her husband to similar corruption, who'd helped him build an airtight case. Who understood his rage, his need for justice over forgiveness. The contractor called about the advocacy center, she continued. They need final approval on the security systems. Make them stronger, Thomas ordered. No more hidden spaces. No more secrets. Like this? Shannon spread out modified plans. I added cameras here and here. Panic buttons in all counseling rooms. Direct lines to police dispatch. Thomas noted her detailed additions. Shannon had become more than an ally in his quest for justice. She'd become a partner who shared his commitment to protecting others from predators. Perfect, he approved. Let's make it happen. Adriana's divorce papers arrived without fanfare. Thomas signed them without hesitation, his signature as firm as his resolve. She found her own path to healing, working with victim advocacy groups, but he felt nothing beyond distant acknowledgement of her recovery. You really never will forgive her? Laura Reeves asked during a case consultation. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Thomas replied. Only turned into foundations for something stronger. The detective studied him. And what are you building now, Thomas? He showed her the advocacy center plans. A fortress. A place where predators like the Reynolds brothers can never hurt anyone again. With Shannon's help, Laura observed carefully. She understands. Thomas's voice held certainty. About justice. About consequences. About building things that last. The new center rose from ground consecrated not by priests but by purpose. Thomas supervised each detail, ensuring no weakness, no vulnerability, no chance for history to repeat itself. Angular Martinez spoke at the opening ceremony, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. This place exists because one man refused to let evil hide behind sacred walls. Because he taught us that true faith isn't about blind trust. It's about standing against corruption, about protecting the vulnerable, about building safe spaces where healing can happen. Thomas stood at the back, watching as Shannon coordinated with staff, as Maria Martinez welcomed other survivors' families, as Detective Reeves discussed security protocols with her officers. He'd built something here, something stronger than the walls that had hidden the Reynolds brothers' crimes. Ready for the next project? Shannon asked, joining him. Always. Thomas looked at the woman who'd stood with him through the darkest days, who shared his unwavering commitment to justice. I hear there's a church in the next county asking for renovation consultation. After your exposure of the Reynolds brothers, they all want Morrison Building and Restoration to check their foundations. Good. Thomas's smile held no warmth. Because I plan to check them all. No more secrets. No more hidden sins. They walked together toward his truck, leaving behind a building that stood as testament to one man's ruthless pursuit of justice. Thomas Morrison had lost his marriage, his faith in religious authority, his trust in easy forgiveness. But he'd built something stronger from those losses, a legacy of protection, of exposure, of truth brought into light. The Sunday confession had shattered his world, but from those fragments, he constructed a different kind of sanctuary. One built not on blind faith or easy absolution, but on the unyielding foundation of justice served and evil exposed. Let others pray for forgiveness. Thomas Morrison would keep building. Strong walls to protect the vulnerable, clear windows to let in light, and solid foundations that could withstand any storm. With Shannon beside him, sharing his vision and his values, he'd ensure no predator ever again found shelter in shadows he'd constructed. The story of Cedar Grove's darkest scandal became a blueprint for change, proving that even the most sacred spaces must be watched, protected, and sometimes torn down to their foundations before true healing can begin. Thomas drove away from the center, Shannon beside him, both of them already planning their next project. The hunt for hidden corruption would continue. The work of justice was never finished, but Thomas Morrison had built his life around seeing things through. And unlike the faith that had failed him, this new purpose would never waver. Epilogue. 10 years later, Morrison Building and Restoration's new headquarters dominated Cedar Grove's skyline, a testament to Thomas Morrison's success in transforming his company's mission. The 10-story building housed not just construction offices, but the largest faith-based abuse prevention network in the country. Thomas stood at his office window, reviewing the latest report from his investigative team. At 45, his frame remained imposing, though strands of gray now streaked his temples. Marriage to Shannon had softened none of his edges. If anything, their shared mission had honed his determination to hunt predators who used religion as cover. The Seattle investigation is complete, Shannon announced, entering his office with a thick file. After their marriage 8 years ago, she'd taken charge of the company's investigative division, her own tragic past with David making her particularly effective at spotting patterns of abuse. Results? Thomas didn't turn from the window. 3 priests, 2 youth ministers, and a bishop who covered it all up. Shannon laid out photographs and financial records. Same pattern as the Reynolds brothers. Targeting vulnerable women, exploiting grief counseling, hidden accounts. Status of the victims? Safe. Angela's outreach team is already working with them. Shannon's voice held pride. The Martinez women had become powerful allies in their mission, with Angela heading the victim support division despite her youth. Thomas nodded. Send everything to Laura's federal task force. Laura Reeves had leveraged the Reynolds case into creating a specialized FBI unit focused on religious institutional abuse. Her promotion to lead investigator had come directly from her work with Morrison Building and Restoration. Already done? Shannon checked her tablet. Maria Martinez is flying out tomorrow to help establish a new support group. The pattern recognition software you developed flagged 3 more potential cases in Oregon. Thomas finally turned, studying his wife. At 60, Shannon's face showed the years of their work, but her eyes remained sharp, focused. Their marriage was a partnership forged in shared purpose rather than traditional romance. Exactly how they both preferred it. The Reynolds brothers? He asked, though he already knew. Still in federal prison. Peter attempted suicide last month, failed of course. Father Michael continues writing appeals, claiming religious persecution. Shannon's smile was cold. The evidence we gathered holds firm. A knock interrupted them. Rachel Chun, formerly Rachel Martinez, stood in the doorway. Angela's mother had remarried 5 years ago to one of Rivera's security team members who'd helped protect her daughter during the sting operation. Thomas? There's someone here to see you. Rachel's expression suggested she wasn't happy about the visitor. Who? Adriana. Thomas's face hardened. His ex-wife had kept her distance since the divorce, focusing on her work with a different victims advocacy group on the West Coast. Their paths crossed occasionally at conferences, but they maintained professional distance. Send her in. Adriana entered, elegant as ever but changed. Therapy and time had rebuilt her strength, though she carried the weight of her past choices visibly. She ran her own support network now, helping other women recognize manipulation tactics used by religious predators. Thomas. Shannon. She nodded to them both. I'll be brief. My organization is tracking a new pattern emerging in megachurches. We need your resources. Details? Shannon was already taking notes. Youth pastors using social media to target teenagers. Private prayer groups that turn into grooming sessions. Offshore accounts masked as mission trip funding. Adriana laid out documents. Sound familiar? The Reynolds blueprint, Thomas observed. They inspired copycats who learn from their mistakes, Adriana agreed. They're better at hiding, better at covering their tracks. But the basic pattern remains the same. Thomas studied the files. How many victims? Confirmed? 23. Suspected? Over 100. Adriana met his gaze steadily. These predators learned from what happened here in Cedar Grove. They studied how the Reynolds brothers got caught. Then they'll learn new lessons. Thomas pressed his intercom. Give me Rivera and Angela. We have work to do. Marcus Rivera arrived within minutes, still carrying himself despite retirement from active security work. He'd married a survivor from one of their cases, now running the company's protection division for witnesses and victims. Angela Martinez followed, her 20s having transformed her from a traumatized teenager into a fierce advocate. Her testimony in the Reynolds case had inspired hundreds of other victims to come forward, and her support programs were now national models. New case. Angela began setting up the digital display. Their 10 years of working together had created an efficient team. Multiple targets, Shannon explained, sharing Adriana's files. They're using updated versions of the Reynolds methods. The same foundations, Thomas added, just with fresh paint. They spent hours dissecting the evidence. Thomas watched his team work, Shannon's analytical precision, Rivera's tactical expertise, Angela's insight into victim psychology, even Adriana's hard-earned understanding of predator methodology. Each brought skills forged in the crucible of the Reynolds case. Father James had passed away 5 years ago, but his legacy lived on in the reformed St. Michael's Cathedral. The church had become a model for institutional transparency, with Thomas's security systems and Angela's safety protocols now standard features in renovated churches nationwide. Father Michael's last appeal was denied yesterday, Laura Reeves announced, joining them via video call. He'll die in prison. Peter's already agreed to testify about other predator networks in exchange for protective custody. The Reynolds case broke the dam, Adriana observed, made other victims believe justice was possible. Thomas stood at the head of the conference table. 10 years ago, they thought they could hide behind sacred walls. Behind my family's legacy. His voice hardened. They learned otherwise. These new predators will learn the same lesson. The team moved into action, each knowing their role. Shannon began correlating financial data. Rivera activated his security networks. Angela reached out to her support group coordinators. Laura mobilized her federal task force. Adriana lingered after the others left. "You never forgave me," she said quietly. "No." Thomas's voice held no anger now, just finality. "But your work helps others avoid your mistakes. That matters more than forgiveness." She nodded, accepting this as she had years ago. "Shannon's good for you. Good for the mission. She understands what we do. Why we do it. Build and destroy," Adriana mused. "Tear down corruption to build safety in its place." "Very you, Thomas?" He didn't respond. Their conversation had ended 10 years ago in a construction site trap. Everything since was just professional courtesy. Later that night, Thomas and Shannon reviewed cold cases in their home office. They'd bought the old Parker house after David's widow became Mrs. Morrison, converting it into a combination living space and command center. "Adriana's intel is solid," Shannon noted. "These new predators are sophisticated, but they can't hide their patterns." "No one can," Thomas agreed. "Not from people who know what to look for." They worked late, as they often did. Their marriage wasn't about romance. It was about shared purpose, shared values, shared dedication to hunting monsters who hid behind religion. Shannon understood Thomas in ways Adriana never had, accepted his ruthless pursuit of justice because she shared it. The next morning brought reports from their nationwide network. Angela had identified 3 more potential victims. Rivera's team had surveillance on 2 youth pastors. Laura's task force was preparing warrants. "Ready to build something?" Shannon asked, handing Thomas architectural plans for a new safe house. "And tear something down," he added, reviewing surveillance photos. They headed to the office together, their decade-long mission unchanged. Thomas Morrison still built things to last, walls to protect the vulnerable, foundations to support the healing, and traps to catch those who would abuse sacred trust. The Reynolds brothers had thought themselves beyond justice, hiding behind church walls Thomas's grandfather had built. Their downfall had created a blueprint for exposing others like them, turning one family's shattered faith into a fortress against future predators. Cedar Grove had changed in 10 years. St. Michael's Cathedral stood restored, both physically and spiritually. The Martinez women had transformed their trauma into a force for positive change. Shannon had found purpose beyond her first husband's tragic death. Even Adriana had built something meaningful from the ruins of her mistakes. But Thomas remained constant. The builder who'd learned to destroy corruption, the man whose ruthless pursuit of justice had inspired a nationwide movement. His grandfather had built churches to worship in. Thomas built systems to protect them, using the same uncompromising standards, the same attention to detail, the same determination to see things through. Let others pray for forgiveness. Thomas Morrison and his team would keep building, keep watching, keep hunting those who turned sacred spaces into hunting grounds. The Sunday confession had ended his faith in easy redemption, but it had birthed something stronger, an unwavering dedication to justice that no amount of time could erode. In his office at day's end, Thomas reviewed messages from their network. 3 new cases identified, 2 predators arrested, 4 victims brought to safety. The work continued, the mission expanded, the team grew stronger. Shannon joined him with fresh files. Another church renovation request. "They want our security systems, our protocols." "They all do now." Thomas studied the blueprints. Since the Reynolds case showed them what happens when predators exploit sacred architecture. "Your grandfather would be proud," Shannon observed. "You're still building churches. Just differently." Thomas nodded slightly. His grandfather had built walls to enclose faith. Thomas built walls to protect it, to expose those who would corrupt it, to ensure no other family would see their spiritual legacy twisted into a predator's playground. The Sunday confession had destroyed his faith in religious authority, but had given him a different kind of mission. Let others seek absolution. Thomas Morrison would keep building his monuments to justice, one exposed predator at a time. The Reynolds brothers' crimes had shattered Cedar Grove's peace a decade ago. But from those fragments, Thomas had constructed something unprecedented, a nationwide network of survivors, investigators, and protectors, all dedicated to ensuring no other community would suffer as his had. He'd lost a wife, but gained a true partner. Lost his faith, but found an unshakable purpose. The price had been high, but the results? Thomas studied the latest batch of case files, each representing lives saved, abuse prevented, justice served. The results would last generations. Just like his grandfather's church walls, but stronger, because these were built not just with stone and mortar, but with unwavering dedication to protecting the vulnerable and exposing the corrupt. Ready for tomorrow? Shannon asked, knowing the answer. Thomas nodded, already focusing on their next target. The work was never done, the mission never complete, but he'd built his life around seeing things through, and this was his true legacy. Let others build churches. Thomas Morrison built justice. And like all his work, he built it to last. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.